With the midsummer drought expected to hit farmers in South Africa and maize productions and output down 22% season on season, we make sense of this with Wandile Sihlobo, Chief Economist of the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa. Wandile, you remain optimistic about South Africa's output over the next coming months into 2025, despite the conditionalities of potential droughts and reduced output. We also face a number of trade hostilities, and I use that word loosely, between neighboring countries. But with India being a major trade partner, having just removed a trade restriction on specific commodities with South Africa, with specific crop with South Africa. Talk to us about what the data points are that informs your optimism.
Yeah, so Oliver, what is happening right now, we are closing a very difficult season. That is the 2023-24 production season, particularly the crop then that we just harvested now. That is the time where we were hardest hit by the drought. You may remember the heat wave that so many of us complained about in a period between the start of February all the way to the end of March. In that particular period, farmers lost a significant part of their crop. And I think these downward revisions of the harvest that we're talking about now, whereby you see South Africa's maize crop down by 22% on a year-on-year basis, it reflects that. But I would even go further, Oliver, on saying, as South Africa, we are still sitting at a reasonably better place. If you think about some of our neighbors, like Zimbabwe, their maize crop is down 60%. In Zambia, it is down by roughly about 50%. So it's really those shocks of the past season. The optimism that I'm talking about is really about where we are heading, because from around about the 15th of this month, in the eastern regions of South Africa, farmers will be busy tilling their land for what we call the 2024-25 production season. It is only there where we think that we will be in what is called the La Nina weather phenomenon, which may bring above normal rainfall and potentially give us a recovery in agriculture.
Yeah, let's double click in on the maize production drops there. What are the contributing factors? Are they internal factors or are they external factors? That is to say, is it a drop in demand, or is it a drop, or is it weather conditionalities and other related factors that have caused the drop in the Southern African region?
That's an important point, because what we see, for example, in South Africa, the issue is really because of the weather issues. In fact, farmers planted more area than they had planted in the previous year. But when you step outside of our country, you look at Zimbabwe and Zambia, you are right. It's other factors also having contributed there. One of those is the higher fertilizer prices, which are still driven in part by the issues of the wars in the Black Sea and the others, Russia being an important player in global fertilizer production. So the higher fertilizer prices led to many farmers in Zimbabwe using less fertilizer than they have done in the previous years. And of course, then the vulnerabilities that were caused on the backdrop of the tough weather, they contributed to that. So that's really the key factors, I would say, at a high level that have led to the poor crop in the 2023-24 production season across the Southern Africa region.
What are you reading into the meteorological data that we have available about the crop season?
What we are reading now, Oliver, because you remember that this midsummer drought that we talk about is really something that one can say perhaps we could have expected it, because we were warned that we were going to what is called an El Nino weather phenomenon last year. But that led at the start to something that is different than the typical occurrence. We got good rainfalls, farmers planted and everything else. And it was only just mid-season where it intensified and it led to that difficulty. But what we are seeing now, looking ahead to the upcoming season, is that things have changed. We are heading towards what is called the La Nina weather phenomenon, which in a case of Southern Africa, it usually brings above normal rainfall. Hence, we think that this may be a period of a recovery, not only for us in South Africa, but also the entire Southern Africa. But I will be quick to say, whenever we are in a La Nina weather phenomenon, we know that in that area of East Africa, think of Ethiopia, Kenya, they typically receive drier weather conditions. But certainly in Southern Africa, as things stand today, it does look like we are heading to a period of a recovery.
We've seen over the last 2-3 quarters here in South Africa a slowing down of food inflation, very specifically because of top-down factors such as reduced energy costs and energy reliability that we've seen in South Africa over the last 6 to 8 months. Does what you're describing to us now give you fear that the input costs, the input inflation and production inflation may go up, once again possibly destabilizing food inflation?
I'm not so worried broadly about the food inflation part. Yes, we had always thought that it was going to begin to slightly tick up, but not as significantly. I mean, to your point, when you look at the data today in South Africa, the headline food inflation is just over 4%. And I think in the coming months, we may see slight upticks, mainly driven by that component of the grain-related basket and to an extent even the meat prices. But I don't think that it will be that significant. One of the key things that we think will play positively for us is the very same factor that you mentioned at your start of this conversation, which is that India has released now a lot of rice to the world market, lifted the export ban. And as a country that relies on import of rice, about 1 million tons a year, anything that leads to lower global rice prices tends to benefit us. So we think to a certain extent we'll benefit from that. We also benefit from affordable global wheat prices. And putting all of those factors together, they do provide an environment where I would say headline food inflation may remain somewhat in control. But I will be quick again to say it always in these things depend on what people put in their basket. And I certainly think that grain-related food products will remain those that may be somewhat expensive for now, leading into the first quarter, but certainly not exorbitant.
Yeah, just over 4,200 is the price per ton of maize at the moment. What is your projection, given the data that you have about outputs today and projected outputs in the coming 2025 season? What is your projection on the fluctuation of the per ton price of grain and maize in the next season?
Look, we always, Economist said not to put out a point number when it comes to the price. But this is what I will say to you. If you look at the white maize prices today, white maize price is trading at just around about 5,500 Rand per ton. And I think we may remain at those levels for some time, heading perhaps maybe into the end of this year. But starting from next year, the minute there is clear evidence that, as we expect, we are heading towards a better agricultural season, you may see that the new season contract prices may begin to soften. But towards the end of the year, on white maize, there will be a lot of pressure because the Southern Africa region also needs this white maize. But on yellow maize, though, Oliver, there's a different story because yellow maize is almost 1,000 Rand cheaper than white maize. That again speaks to the point that yellow maize is widely available in the world market. Roughly 95% of the maize that is traded in the world is yellow. The key constraint is on white maize, which is a staple for us and only produced in large volume in this region of ours in Southern Africa and in Mexico, which is why there is that price difference. And I think in all of these, the moderation in prices, certainly on white maize, that is something that we can expect in the coming year. For now, I think we will dwindle in these levels that we are in.
Wandile, thank you so much for your time and your insights. I really do appreciate it. Agricultural economist Wandile Sihlobo.